discuss. Estelle, welcome. Good to see you. We're here to discuss lesson 3 of this amazing journey, Colorful Profiles, where we dive into, explore, and learn about some incredible characters of our past. And the goal is to derive inspiration from these people. Today is no different. We're going to be discussing 2 very special women. Today is dedicated to women. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nivra b'dvarim. So they say Senator Joe Lieberman, Pens. Senator Joe Lieberman, after his defeat, 2000 election, he was feeling sorry, he was feeling sad. So he came home, and his wife Hadassah gives him a good meal, sits him down, tells him, "Don't worry, Joe. In this house, you'll always be vice president." Oh. All right. Hey, do we need pens? No. And $5, $5. No, I'm good. Okay. Okay, so one. Okay, good. So we're going to be discussing today some incredible women in our history. We're going to first give an introduction of the role that the Torah traditionally has for women. Now, this is obviously a touchy subject. What do you mean? Roles? What does that mean? So we're going to learn about it. We're going to go all the way back to King Solomon, which we're going to read all together. But without further ado, let's just start today's class. There's an incredible lessons to derive and pretty fascinating stories. So everyone's good. Everyone has a book or sharing a book at least. That's good. Guys online, book or sharing a book. Good. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to start with page 96, third lesson, introduction. Joan, are you up for reading the introduction?
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. The present lesson explores the life stories of some remarkable Jewish women with the goal of better understanding the unique role that Jewish women have played in the history of the Jewish people. This study also provides product food for thought regarding the role of the Jewish woman today in terms of contemporary efforts to secure the future of the Jewish people.
So these incredible women not only secured and did good for their family and their community, but in a sense played a role for the future and the sustainability of the Jewish people. So we're going to be discussing today what are the unique characteristics of great women and a great Jewish woman specifically. Okay, let's see. We're going to start with a video, which you can also see the text of this video is going to be on text number 1, page 97. This is the Eshet Chayil song. Mm-hmm. Every Friday night, which is the cornerstone and the island of sanity of the week, is Shabbat, which is Friday night to Saturday night. Friday night ushers in Shabbat with the women lighting Shabbat candles, followed by Kiddush. We make a blessing over a cup of wine. Kiddush literally means to sanctify. We sanctify the day through making a blessing over a cup of wine. Some religions prohibit wine, some mandate wine. We mandate wine. Okay? Different. You can go in excess, you can go a little mashigi, depends, once a year, twice a year, Purim, Simchas Torah, whatever. Other than that, you got to be in control of your faculties. But the point is that on Friday night, we have to make Kiddush on wine specifically. You could make a grape juice, someone doesn't want to drink alcohol, but the idea is to sanctify. Now, before the Kiddush, we read this following text number 1. What is this? This was written by King Solomon about 2,800 years ago, just around there, in the book of Proverbs, where he lauds and gives praise to the women of valor. This is a very famous piece of the book of Proverbs. We have a song that we sing every Friday night. So we'll play the song. It's a few minutes here, and then you can actually follow along in the text and text script. So let's see. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I just realized that those online didn't see this because it's not being shared. But this melody is said every single Friday night. And literally this last Friday night, we sang it around our table. So this is something that's been going on for over, the custom started about 1,500 years ago to start doing this. But it was written and composed about 2,800 years ago. So let's try to analyze the characteristics that are highlighted in this poem. Okay. What are the characteristics that are highlighted in this poem? So if we look at an exercise on page 100, on exercise 3.1, identify 5 defining qualities that are emphasized in the Ode of the Woman of Valor. So we'll just go through them. Number 1 is industriousness, which means we say it says how the woman goes like a ship and does business to provide for her family. She has the ability to run a business. Resourcefulness, devotion, generosity, and finally the final one at the end is the fear of God. These are the characteristics and the traits of an ideal Jewish woman. Okay, the Rebbe explains that for Jewish continuity, the Jewish continuity doesn't live in a synagogue. It lives where? In the house. Who's going to make sure that the children are going to take up what the ancestors took on? Is the woman who runs the home. It has to happen in the home. The men do a good job. They try their best. But at the end of the day, who's going to instill the values in children? That's the role of a Jewish woman. Because with tenderness and with intuition, it says bina yetera nitna leisha, which means an extra degree of intuition has been given to women in general. That's what the Talmud says. So when dealing with these types of education, the women at the cornerstone of that. And collectively, Jewish continuity relies on a collective of Jewish women. Yes, Barry?
I just had a question, Rabbi,
Yeah.
and maybe it's just a question for you. Had fear of God.
Yeah,
I looked at it the other way. I looked at it for each one had a reference for God.
reverence for fear.
Do you get on the same or?
You're asking a good question. Barry's asking a very familiar question, and it's a good question, which is, we say fear of God. What does that mean? Trembling? What does it mean, fear of God? We talk about a lot in Jewish thought and Jewish theology. We talk about love and fear of God. So love is understandable. Fear, what's fear? So I think fear may be a better word would be reverence, as you just suggested. Reverence, awe, submission almost, but not in a sense of trembling that this God's going to come and smite you, whatever. It's more that there's a presence. You have a reverence to God. The presence is felt. That's the idea. Make sense? Yeah, it's a good point and good, I would say even correction, because fear might be the wrong word here. In Hebrew, the word yira, Hebrew is a very dense language. How many words in the whole Hebrew language, biblical Hebrew? About 8,000-9,000. How many words in the English language? 250,000, I think, something like that. And growing, exactly. So for the same word, you could say happiness, you could say joy, jubilation, elation, happy, ecstasy, all these words that mean the same thing, maybe a little different here or there. But in Hebrew, there's one word, 2 words, 3 words, whatever. It's a very dense language. The word yira means fear, but it also means reverence. So it's a good point. Okay. In text number 2, the Rebbe says how the 12 original tribes of the Jewish people, that means the children of Jacob, were attributed their character traits that led them to be viable to lead the Jewish people and be the fathers of the Jewish nation was because of their mothers, not because of their dad, because of their mothers. Let's look at text number 2 where the Rebbe makes this point. Come back to you, or are you ready to read? Text 2, go ahead, please.
Our forefather Jacob arrived in a foreign land where he endured tough times and trials. Nevertheless, he was not deterred by any difficulties. To the contrary, Jacob successfully established the Jewish people in that foreign environment, with all his children remaining faithful to the tradition of his forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This was the only possible thanks to the Jewish mothers, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, who did everything on their part to ensure the integrity of their home and the future of their people. This is the deeper significance of the concept that the Jewish woman is the mainstay of the home, not only of her individual household, but also the entire house of Israel.
So why are the women considered the mainstay? The Rebbe's making a very strong case. It's mainstay not only of the home, but of the entire nation. That's the continuity. And the Rebbe doesn't say things to make people feel good. The Rebbe says things that are objectively 100% true. So let's see at text 3 where the Rebbe makes his case when he spoke actually to a group of women. Let's see on text number 3. Robbie, please.
Jewish women have a unique calling to guide others to love and cherish Judaism. This calling begins at home with their own family. Every Jewish woman has a responsibility and obligation to devote herself to the spiritual well-being of her family. Using her unique feminine qualities of kindness and compassion, she has the ability to provide the appropriate nurture to each member of her family, guiding them and drawing them closer to Torah. Baal Shem Tov taught that all Jews are like brothers and sisters belonging to a single family. It therefore follows that this guidance should extend beyond one's nuclear family until it reaches the entire Jewish people.
We have sources in the Talmud that says a child's emotional makeup is directly affected by their being carried by their mother for 9 months in the womb. Their emotional makeup, DNA obviously, but also the emotions of the mother transfer over to the child while the child's being formed in the body. So not only in ethics and morals later in life, but the actual makeup of a child is formed by its mother. Okay, so but this song shows that the influence is not just in the home, the influence is far beyond the home. This character traits of nurturing and bringing up and developing is not just in a home with children, but as a general Jewish nation at large. And what we're going to do today is we're going to focus on 2 individuals which had a pretty remarkable impact on the Jewish people at home. So let's look at our first character. Look at page 104. Doña Gracia Nasi. Let's see about her. You guys heard about her before? Screen? Oh, yes. Here we go. Unsung Heroines, Doña Gracia Nasi. Let's see. Estelle, could you read that paragraph? Please.
The first character in today's lesson is Doña Gracia Nasi. She was born in Lisbon, Portugal, in the early 16th century, an era of terrible danger and oppression. Her life story unfolded in the context of the expulsions and forcible conversions of the Jews of Spain and Portugal.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to share a video, which I know we discussed last week a little bit, but this is a new video about that era. Let's see. Guys online, you see this? See what
Yes.
this new thing?
It is well known in 1492, the Jews of Spain were expelled by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. This was the
This good or no good, guys? You hear well?
Fast.
It's fast? That's why. You see that? See right there?
Yeah, it's at high speed.
High speed, right. That's how I listen to things, guys. Sorry. I think this thing might be better if we just leave it like this. Love technology, right? Love it. Okay, here we go. Better? All right.
As is well known, in 1492, the Jews of Spain were expelled by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. This was the culmination of a long process of discrimination against the Jews. So in 1492, thousands of Jews packed up to leave. It was a very difficult decision. They had lived in Spain for hundreds of years. There had been periods of tremendous prosperity and success, the golden age of Spanish Jewry. And this was a terrible failure of the royal alliance, of their long-standing connections to the kings, to the royalty. Through service, they worked for the kings, they paid taxes, they were economic assets. They also bribed the kings, but this failed. And in 1492, thousands of Jews left. So where were the Jews meant to go? It was a question. What seemed safest was to go to Portugal. Portugal is the country right next door on the Iberian Peninsula. It had a similar culture, a similar climate. There were lots of family connections between Spanish Jews and Portuguese Jews. There were lots of business partnerships between Spanish Jews and Portuguese Jews. And so it made the most sense. In fact, the King of Portugal at the time of the Spanish expulsion was inviting the Jews to come to Portugal. He insisted that he was going to honor Jewish activities, Jewish assets, and many of the Jews left, traveled over the mountains into Portugal, and reestablished their lives there. Little did they know that that welcoming tolerance would be very short-lived. In 1497, a new king in Portugal was now in the process of making a peace treaty with Ferdinand and Isabella. King Manuel was trying to marry the daughter of Ferdinand and Isabella, and therefore he was told by them that Jews of Portugal have to be expelled as well. And so he announced an expulsion of the Jews for Portugal. But he really had little intention to let the Jews go. Imagine how hard it was for those Jews who had risked everything, left their lives, come to Portugal, just barely reestablished themselves. They're actually very motivated to leave Portugal. They come down on the appointed day. The king has promised that there will be ships on the docks to take them out of Portugal, only to discover that this is really a trick, and the king had little intention to let them go. And on the docks, it gets chaotic, and the Jews are forcibly baptized into Christianity. So it's ironic that the Jews who had the most strength to leave Spain and not take the easier route of converting end up being forcibly converted in Portugal. Once the king of Portugal tells the new Christians, which means those Jews who were forcibly converted, that he's not bringing an inquisition, it's pretty clear to everyone that they are going to continue practicing Judaism. It's only once the Inquisition does arrive that you really have to go underground with your Jewish practices. So what would it look like to be a Marrano Jew, a secret Jew? All public activities associated with Judaism would have to be cut out. No going to shul, no public activities and charitable organizations. And so essentially, Judaism goes inside the house. Things that can be done within the home and covered over or obscured in their Jewish origins. So some of the main practices that Marranos would do would be lighting Shabbos candles, setting out clean linen for preparation for Shabbos, cooking Jewish foods before a yontif, baking matzos in secret. These are just some of the things that Marrano Jews tried to keep in secret. These type of activities were very much the roles of women, and women play a huge role in perpetuating Marrano Judaism. When you think about it, all of the public roles of Judaism that are normally performed by men, going to shul, reading the Torah, running charitable organizations, are no longer available to Marrano Jews. And so within the homes, women had a very strong role. Marrano women are considered by the historians the defenders of the faith. They really are the ones who carry forward.
There you go. So you see that how much more so the role of Jewish women at that period. You know, there was no public Judaism. Everything was under wraps in basements. So when it came time to perform and educate and to bring on another generation of Jews, the women played a huge role at that time, especially. So we're going to read about this character. She was born in the Spanish expulsion in 1492. Many fled to Portugal. Just a little summary here. King Manuel rounded up and forcibly baptized the Jews of Portugal. You have to understand, the Jews that actually left to Portugal were tenacious Jews. It was much easier to stay behind in Spain and to just acquiesce, just convert, than maybe live a secret life or a dual life. But to pick up and leave, that means you had the money to do so, you had the connections to do so, you had the courage, the tenacity to do so. And these were like the fighters of the Jewish people. And yet they were forcibly converted. So when they went underground, they had to carry the Jewish soul, the Jewish nation. And this is what we see from Shmuel Usk, which we're going to see in text 4 and text 5, which is him recounting this era. And he talks a little bit in third person. He talks about Jacob, Yaakov, Israel. He's referring to basically the current situation they were in. Maybe Mike, you can do 4 and 5, please.
Portuguese promises. Of those who were ejected from the Spanish kingdom and who remained faithful to Judaism, the majority had gone to Portugal. King John II promised to allow them to live in their religion and provide ships for those who wished to leave. In the next section, forced conversion. Once King Manuel I obtained the crown, he did not wait long to torment me. He soon proclaimed that all Jews in his kingdom must become Christians or leave Portugal within a stipulated period. This proclamation greatly saddened all the children, for their hearts told them that my enemy wished to perpetrate an evil greater than exile, and they determined to leave. Since they had lost their lands, they gathered the rest of their belongings as best they could in this short time and prepared to leave. But when the king realized the Jews' resolve and how little they seemed to mind exile in preference to changing their religion, he revealed his evil intent. He commanded all Jews in the kingdom to assemble in Lisbon, Rute, spreading reports that he would there provide them with ships. But as soon as he gathered them, he had them herded into large buildings called os estacios. And when he had corralled them, like sheep prepared for the slaughter, he at last exposed his venomous character and announced that they were all to become Christians, and that they should do out of love what they would otherwise have to do by compulsion. These threats were not sufficient to make my children turn their backs to their God. Instead, they answered resolutely that they would not comply with his request. Finally, the king commanded that food and drink be withheld from them for 3 days, to try them with the anguish of hunger. But this they likewise courageously endured. The king realized that even this was insufficient to change them, and that if he starved them any longer, they would perish. Dragging some by their legs and others by their hair and beards, punching and mauling them, his men brought them to the churches, where the waters of baptism were thrown upon them. As a result of this violence, contrary to divine and human laws, the bodies of many Jews were made Christian, but no stain ever touched their souls. Instead, they kept forever impressed upon them the seal of their ancient law.
So we just read what we saw in the video, right? That was the plan that was done. So we see that the Portuguese converts were really down to the wire. And even after they officially converted, many of them were left alone, for the most part, because the Inquisition, which means the office by the government to go and hunt down these undercover Jews, wasn't established yet. So we'll learn about that in a moment. Let's look at page 108, the Mendes Benveniste family in Portugal. This was a very prominent family, and our character, you'll see, Beatriz de Luna. You see her on the bottom, in the middle on the left side, also known as her other name, Gracia Nasi, and later she adopted the name Hana. She is who we're going to be focusing on, but let's get a little bit of a backstory. So she was born in 1510, and she was given the Spanish non-Jewish name of Beatriz de Luna. She was a descendant of a prestigious and wealthy family, the Benveniste family in Spain. Her parents left everything behind in Spain to go live as Jews in Portugal. But in 1528, she married her uncle. This was very common back in the day that you'd marry within family. Who was her uncle? Her uncle was Francisco Mendez. Do you guys see that in the family tree? Francisco Mendez on the top. So Francisco married Beatriz, which was also the same person as Doña Gracia. Okay. So far, so good. Anyone confused yet? Not yet, right? Okay, good. So he and his brother were one of the wealthiest people in the world at the time. Certainly in the Jewish community, but in general in the world at the time. So she married her uncle, which was way older than her, much older than her. And they were able to practice Judaism for the most part. They operated businesses in Spain, Flanders, which is more north near Antwerp. And they had a financial relationship with the royal families throughout the entire region. Let's see from the same person, our friend Shmuel Usk describes the experience of Jews like the Mendez family in text number 6, this dual lives they live. Ken, please.
The new Christians had become immersed in power and its deceits. They had nearly forgotten their ancient faith and lost the fear of that fountain whence our life flows because of the vast riches and the status and rank they were acquiring in the kingdom. They now felt secure in their imitation of the Christians, though they never exchanged the secret of their soul.
So again, we see here that what? They once they officially converted, they were able to manage this dual lifestyle. On one hand, they were externally Christian, and in private lives, they did what they had to do, and it was kind of like a sustainable model, they thought, you know? In that time, obviously, this was where the Jewish women literally held the Jewish community together for those about 100 years. So 100 years later, this Rabbi Yom Tov Tzahalon, which lived in Israel, he was born in Sfat in Israel, he writes about the Jews who were forcibly converted in Portugal. Let's see. Sorry, guys. Donna? Not Donna, in front, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're on text 7.
Donna, before you, 1 second, I forgot your names, guys. Yeah,
Me?
yeah.
Marcia.
Marsha and
Raisa.
Raisa. Okay, Marsha, please.
Text 7?
Yeah.
The Jewish faith is embedded in the hearts of righteous women of Portugal. They instruct the men and draw them close to the Jewish faith, as we have heard and witnessed.
So there was no inquisition yet. The term inquisition means that there was a government officially, a government hunting down the Jews, an office, the government hunting down the Jews that were undercover practicing Judaism. There was no inquisition yet. Why was there no inquisition yet? It was outlawed, but there was no, let's say, law enforcement to go after these undercover Jews, was because they were very powerful Jewish people. Part of them were these families that were able to be influential. Nothing was set up without the approval of the Pope, none of these offices. And they were influential in paying the right people, buying a Rolex for this one, taking care of that one, to make sure that this office was never set up to go after the Jewish people who were undercover. Fine. Diego, which is the brother of Francisco, right? You see that? In the middle of that, to go back, we're gonna have to refer back to his family tree, just as we're going through the story here. So in 108, you'll see Francisco married
Beatrice.
yes, married Beatrice, which is Doña Gracia, same person. So Francisco's brother, Diego, were partners, and again, the wealthiest people around at that time. Diego was arrested in Flanders on charges of being Jewish, which is north of Spain and Portugal. Okay, so Francisco pulled out a pretty impressive Rolodex of letters to be written on behalf of letters to be written to get his brother freed towards Charles V, the King of Spain, which is the Lord of the Netherlands. So he was able to get King John III of Portugal to write this letter. He was able to get as well King Henry VIII of England to write a letter. This is all to get his brother Diego out of trouble when he was arrested in Flanders. If you want to see an actual copy of that letter, you'll see on page 110, which is a letter from King John III asking Charles V, the King of Spain, petitioning the release of Diego Mendez. Okay? So this is it was pretty impressive that they had this type of clout network, correct?
How do you like that word Judaizing?
Judaizing, yeah,
Mm.
it's a verb. Okay. But what was the motivation to get all these letters written? What was all the motivation to get these letters written? It was not because they loved Diego so much. We can see from this letter, actually, we'll go do a little review in a second. We see from this letter on page 110, when it's translated, is from doing business, he owed money to a lot of these kings. You borrow money from the treasury, you do some business, pay him back. So it was purely a personal reason why they wanted Diego out of prison, but nonetheless, he was still able to pull that clout. So Beatriz de Luna married Francisco Mendez, a wealthy and influential Jew. The new Christians enjoyed success in Portugal while observing Judaism quietly. Francisco died, and the Inquisition was established. This is the next we're talking about. So after Francisco died, in 1535, which is about 40 years after the Inquisition officially took place, the clout and the power of these brothers was diminished, and that's when the Inquisition officially started. Right before he passed away, Beatrice gave birth to their daughter Anna. And then Francisco passed away right away. So if you go back to our family tree again on page 108, you'll see Beatrice married Francisco. They got married in Lisbon. They had a daughter, Anna, in 1535. Shortly afterwards, in 1535, Francisco passed away, and that's when the Inquisition officially started in Portugal. Fine. In 1536, a year later, the Inquisition was officially started, was established, and no longer the Jewish people were able to live these double lives because they were actively being hunted down, trying to see which Jews are doing what. You're not traveling on Friday night, you're disappearing Friday night with sundown. Where are you going in your basement? You're lighting Shabbat candles, you're trying to teach, you're trying to bake matzah. They were actively pursuing them. And that's when a big stream, a steady stream of Jewish emigration began from Portugal. Now, Beatrice inherited her husband's wealth. 50% of her husband's wealth she inherited. Again, this was like the Bill Gates, Elon Musk of the time. And 50% was given to her, Beatrice, and the other 50% was to who? To her daughter, the daughter Anna. So the King John III, wanted to get his hands on the Mendez fortune. So what did he do? He devised a plan where he's going to convince Beatrice to raise Anna in the palace. She'll become one of the children at the palace, basically. And eventually, when she gets older, he'll be able to adopt her and take 50% of this wealth. In today's equivalent, $250 billion. Around there. Whatever, it's a huge, huge, huge fortune. I just made that up. Well, anyway. So, what does Beatrice do? What does our beautiful person, Doña Gracia, what does she do? She leaves to Antwerp. In Antwerp at the time, the Jewish conversos, the Jewish Moranos, were not allowed to practice fully, but they were still able to have this in between stage where they were able to do it undercover. There was still more latitude for the Jewish people there. You know, there's a side point. So there are three mitzvahs in the Torah that are hard-lined mitzvahs. For example, if there's a commandment on Yom Kippur, you're not allowed to kindle a flame, right? You're not allowed to strike a match on Yom Kippur. It's considered a violation of Yom Kippur. It's considered work, right? When are you allowed to kindle a match? When there's someone who's sick and you need to take care of them, medicine, you got to feed them a meal, whatever it is, right? So there are rules in the Torah. All the rules are broken to save a human life. Why? Because a human life is holier than the Torah. So if a human life is holier, it's not that we are disregarding Torah, disregarding Yom Kippur. We're just preferring a human life. You understand? Fine. But there are three no-goes. That means there are three exceptions, and even if a human life is at stake, you're still not allowed to do the transgression, and the human life has to be taken. That means there's 316 commandments in the Torah, 613 commandments in the Torah. 610 you are allowed to break in order to save a human life. There's three that you're not allowed to break. The human life must be either passively, you can't actively kill, but you cannot break to save. What are those three? Those three prohibitions? Number one is murder. You can't say I'm going to kill one person to save another. You're never allowed to do that. Number two is illicit relationships. You say have this immoral relationship to save a person. The answer is no. You let the person pass and you don't commit this immoral relationship in order to save. And the third thing is idol worship, idolatry. So converting to Christianity in Judaism is considered a form of idol worship. For whatever reason, we'll get into another time. But a lot of these these conversos, these Jewish people, with their challenge was they're faced with a choice. This is one of the things you're not allowed to do, right? So to convert fully, that was something that you'll never do. But how about this in between half conversion? Right? So there's a big halachic debates as to if this was allowed to even do it publicly, to even on the outside. And many hardline Jews said, no, we're not going to even do it in the outside. We're going to give up our life. There's a big halachic debate on what's the path forward at the time. But regardless, Beatrice Beatrice, if we go back to our family tree on page 108, you'll see that her sister's name is Brianda. You see that, guys? Right next to Beatrice, Brianda. Who did she marry? She married Diego. Later. This was much later. This was in 1539. They got married. So when they got married, eventually Diego passed away, and he gave the power of attorney for his whole state to who? To his sister-in-law, not even his wife, which later caused a riffraff. But what we're trying to focus on is the reason why he preferred his sister-in-law over his wife was because of her high estimation. She was a very skilled business person. When her husband left her the wealth, she didn't just sit and enjoy whatever wealth. She was actively traveling and doing business deals and actually actively growing the fortune. She had this amazing ability. Eventually, Antwerp itself didn't remain a safe haven for Jews. In 1544, Antwerp as well started cracking down on the flow of Jewish people coming from Portugal and even Spain at the time. And now King Charles V was making advances towards Beatrice, her daughter, and he really wanted to get his hands on his fortune. This was many years after. This is 1544. The family picked up again and fled again, this time to Venice. And here too, they officially lived as Christians in Venice. And why did they do this? Why did they still live as Christians? Because all their money was still tied up in Antwerp. So if you leave and you proclaim yourself as a Jew, you'll lose all the assets. So they're officially still being a Jewish person, a Christian in the outside in Antwerp. And eventually, they were confined to what we know today as the Venetian ghetto. I'm sure some of you have been there in Venice, the ghetto there. And the Mendes family, once they got their money out and they settled in the Venetian ghetto, they were able to finally come out of the open and finally practice Judaism in the open. But this took many, many years. They actually settled in, I think it was 1546, I believe. They finally settled and openly were able to practice Judaism in Venice many years later. So the family finally returned to Judaism. Beatrice Garcia became Chana. Her daughter Anna became Rihanna. And her nephew, John, let's go back to 108 for a second, which is her nephew on the other side. You see the other side? John Mikas became Yosef Nasi. Nasi was the name of the family he took on because Nasi means prince. So now, what did she do? So Doña Gracia Nasi assisted thousands of Jewish Portuguese refugees to get out and to go to Antwerp and then eventually to Venice. She combined the qualities of ancient Jewish heroines. Let's see here on text number 8. This is the same, our same friend Shmuel Usk. Let's see what he says about her generosity on page number 8. Reisa, please. Page 8. Text 8, sorry. Page 111.
Okay. Has God's mercy ever appeared to anyone in human garb? It has appeared to you to help you with your troubles. Has anyone ever seen a woman risk her life to save her brethren, as if she inherited Miriam in need compassion, or governed her people with Deborah's remarkable prudence, or aid the persecuted with Esther's boundless virtue and surprising pity, or free the besieged from anguish, like the chaste and generous widow Julia, a woman of true hearted courage. The Lord has sent you such a woman in our own days from the supreme choir of his host. He has treasured all these virtues in a single soul. To your happy fortune, he clothes to infuse them in the delicate and chastity person of the blessed Jewess Nasi. Your inspiration greatly encouraged your needy children in Portugal, who were too poor and weak to leave the fire and to undertake a lengthy journey. They generously provided money and other needs and comforts to the refugees who arrived destitute, seasick, and stuporous in Flanders and elsewhere, to help them overcome the rigors of the craggy Alps in Germany and other lands, and she hastened to alleviate the miseries caused by the hardship and hazards of their long journey. Thus, with her golden hand and angelic purpose, she lifted the majority of our people in Europe from the abyss of their hardship and countless others, where poverty and sin has hurled them. She continued to guide them until they were in safe lands and until she had returned them to the obedience and the precepts of their ancient God.
So in praise of Doña Gracia, Shmuel Usk invokes some incredible names. He puts her at the same level as Miriam, the sister of Moses, which literally, for a different story, we'll talk about. Miriam is the sole reason why Moses was even born. And she cared for Moses. She was his older sister. She saved his life many times, right? She invokes also Deborah, who was a warrior and led the Jewish people at her time. She was one of the few prophetess, one of the many, but the few that are recorded in the Torah, the 7 or the 9 that are recorded in the Torah, of a prophetess, that was also a judge, who was also learned, and also was a warrior, a general. He also mentions Queen Esther. He mentions also Judith, which was a heroine who basically assassinated a Greek general during the times of Hanukkah. Right? This is who he puts her up with. So he describes her as a motherly figure who gently carried all her children, aka the Jewish people, to safety. Each time she came, she would encourage and help, and people have to be resettled. Can you imagine, building lives every few years? You're traveling to many different places. Who is supporting all this? This Beatrice, also known as Danya, also known as Chana later, right? So one of the main things she did do that was able to revive, you're talking about 70, 80 years of Jewish people on the run, not able to practice since 1492 until the mid 16th century. So what happened? The Jewish people didn't know how to read Torah, didn't know how to read Hebrew at all. So she actually set up a printing press, and she was able to commission the Ferrara Bible, which filled the void at the time. The Jewish people did not know how to read Hebrew, but they were able to have a Bible written in Ladino, which was the dialect of Spanish for the Jewish people at the time. If you look on page 112, you'll see a dedication of the Ferrara Bible in 1553 in a Bible written in Ladino. And if you look on top, the second line, Doña Gracia Nasi, is a dedication to her in her for everything she did. Eventually, in 1553, the family moved to Constantinople, which is the Ottoman Empire at the time, obviously. There was a German merchant named Hans Derschwang, which we'll see a text in text 9, where Hans Derschwang, which was not Jewish, he writes, and he seems that there's something fishy with this person, Doña Gracia Nasi, and she's so generous. He's never seen such generosity in his life. He doesn't understand it. He actually is not a lover of the Jewish people at all, but he actually sits and he writes in text number 9 about Doña, and again, being fishy, that there's this such generosity exists that he can't wrap his mind around it. Let's see Donna, please. Let's see text number 9.
Wow.
Say it again.
Taking Doña Gracia in Constantinople. In 1553, an old Portuguese woman, Gracia Nasi, came to Constantinople from Venice with her daughter and servants. The Jews are very proud of her, call her a signora. She lives also in luxury and extravagance, has many servants, maids also, among them 2 from the Netherlands. She is said to have been formerly a Marano, and here to have become a Jewish again. The signora, whom I have mentioned, and her son-in-law live in such state that it would amply befit a prince. They fed about 80 people a day, must have cheated people somewhere. Something must be wrong with them. They allege that they have left a lot of wealth behind them. Also, that some is following them on the sea. And considering the cost of living in Turkey, their wealth will soon shrink here. They gave the pashas a lot and distributed several thousand ducats to the poor Jews for their hospital.
So Gracia or Doña Gracia Nasi, she not only that, she also set up yeshivas, synagogues for Portuguese Jews all across the Mediterranean. She also was she did international diplomacy on their behalf to try to influence governments to save them, etc. And in 1561, she acquired the city of Tiberias for the Jews to settle in Israel. What was this about? It was obviously under the Ottoman rule at the time. And she purchased this city with the intent to build it up and to have a safe haven for the Jewish people to go to. Eventually, she didn't end up going there. Her plan was to end up live there and spend the rest of her life. So she didn't end up actually going there. But everything that happened in that city, hundreds of Jews, thousands of Jews, flocked to Israel and settled in Tiberia because of her. Tiberias, which is, in the north, right off the Kinneret, right off the Sea of the Galilee. Let's see text 10, which talks about a Portuguese traveler that talks and recounts what was going on in Israel at the time. And he recounts how the Jewish people felt that this might be the beginning of the Messianic era. We have this throughout history, and we have a little bit of glimmer of hope after such destruction. So maybe this is the beginning of something amazing. Maybe this is the beginning of the ultimate redemption. So let's see this text 10. Mohammed, please. Let's see text 10.
High hopes. At the time we left Jerusalem, I heard from Portuguese Jews about Portuguese Jewish women who had escaped the kingdom with a great deal of difficulty, and who had thus become very powerful and had a great name in those countries. She bought this city of Tiberias from the Sultan for the price of a large sum of money and payment of perpetual tax of 1,000 pesetas per year. And that next summer, she and all her family will leave share with her all the Jews who will be following her. On hearing this news, all of the Jews who live in the land of Israel are full of great happiness, but they hope that if these people come and settle here, the Messiah will come.
There you go. So the Tiberius project actually fell apart. It didn't end up being what she intended it to be, because in 1569 she passed away herself in Constantinople, and she was mourned across the Jewish nation, across the Jewish world in general. If you look at text number 11, this is from Rabbi Moshe Ditrani. This is from a great sage in Tzvat. He wrote on the words of King Solomon, Rabos Banos Asuchayil V'chana Alsa Kolena. In other words, it says V'at. It's supposed to be on you, but he switched the word you. Look at text number 11. Many women have performed worthily, but Chana surpassed them all. He switched the words as a play to show and to give her this level of recognition. So Doña Gracia's legacy continued with her son-in-law and business partner, Don Yosef Nasi. After Don Yosef passed away in 1579, only her daughter Reina, which was Anna, the original daughter, continued the family tradition of supporting yeshivas and funding the printing of Jewish books. She continued. So we don't have a picture of Doña, we don't have a picture of her daughter, but we do have a picture of Doña Gracia the Younger, which is her niece. If you look at the family tree, you'll see I don't think the person's on the family tree. That's the coin you'll see on page 115, metal produced in Ferrara, depicting Doña Gracia's niece, Gracia Nasi the Younger. So her incredible success showed not just her ability to make money and to lead and to be a diplomat and to be influential and to pull the right strings, but it also, her legacy is about saving and caring and being a mother to the Jewish people at the time, and single-handedly saved tens of thousands of lives, fleeing from one place to another, and set up the yeshiva system, set up synagogues in each place they went to, and eventually even setting up the city of Tiberia to be a cornerstone of the Jewish people at that time. So she awakened the dormant Pintalayid. The Jewish people at the time, they were Jewish, but they had nothing to hold on to, so she was able to awaken that. She helped thousands of Jews leave Spain and Portugal, and that's her legacy, an incredible legacy. Let's see text number 12. Beth, please.
Nurturing Jewish souls. The inner spark of Jewish consciousness, the Yid, is present and complete in all Jews, regardless of their external conditions or circumstances. However, we must work to awaken this inner core within ourselves and others, so that it should become revealed, influencing and guiding all the particulars of daily life. Jewish women play a particularly important role in this task because divine providence has endowed Jewish women with special qualities and abilities to achieve this. Women are endowed with greater and more expressive qualities of sensitivity and warmth. They are therefore best suited to awaken and evoke the innate feelings that every Jew possesses: love for God, love for Torah, and love for fellow Jews.
Beautiful. We believe that there's a pintelayid, which means there's a spark of our divine soul inside of us that can be nurtured and be brought out. And we see this from this woman of valor, a poster example of someone who nurtured her family, nurtured her community, nurtured her faith, nurtured her brothers and sisters, and nurtured them after one of the most destructive times of our history. Spanish Inquisition was a huge blow to the Sephardic Jews. Okay, let's move on to our next character, Unsung Heroines, Rebbetzin Bayla Katz. Let's see. Yes, Mike.
Before we do that,
Yeah,
let me
please.
just mention something you mentioned at the beginning.
Please.
We're gonna have to leave, we're gonna have to quit fairly, right around
12:30. Yeah.
So if anybody wants any of the food that is still there and quite delicious,
Now's your time.
now's a really good time to go and take a plate and have fun, but I just,
Consider yourself warned. We've done it. This is your last chance. Okay, good. Judith, please. Let's see, Rebbetzin Bayla Katz, page 118.
And I refrain
From a remarkable philanthropist. See that?
18, yeah. Oh, you want me to go? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, from a remarkable philanthropist who supported Jewish scholarship, we now turn to explore the life of an extraordinary woman who was a scholar in her own right. Rebbetzin Bayla Katz, we are also shifting between cultures now, from the Portuguese Jews and the Sephardic diaspora to the Ashkenazi lands of Poland and Ukraine in the 16th and 17th centuries.
Okay. So Bayla Katz was born in 1573 in Lvov. They say Lviv today, but I remember saying Lvov my whole life. So let's say Lvov in Galicia. And her father, was Rabbi Yisrael Adels. His father was a wealthy community leader. At the age of 16, she married Yoshua Folk Katz. Those days, people got married fairly early. Who was an incredible scholar. He wrote the book on the Shulchan Aruch and the Code of Jewish Law called the Risha Prisha, and he wrote many other books. So let's see. When her husband passed away, when her father passed away, here. So we see here, this is Bayla Katz, Rebbetzin Bayla Katz's husband, Yosef Katz, which wrote an introduction to the book of his father-in-law. Okay, let's see text 13. Barry, please.
Role model. I cannot refrain from committing to writing the account of the many wonderful qualities of the distinguished, modest, devout, and righteous woman. My mother, my teacher, Rebbetzin Bayla.
I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. This is when her husband passed away. Her son wrote about her mother. There you go. Right? So this is when her husband passed, which was a great sage. Her son wrote an introduction to his father book. And this is that introduction. Sorry about that. Yeah, go ahead, Barry.
Her radiance, splendor, and glory is not ours alone, but belong to all the people of her generation. She was as beautiful as the moon, pure and glory to all daughters of Israel. The women saw her and pointed to pleasant deeds, and she guided them on the proper path. She is therefore deserving of the honor to have chocolate good deeds recorded in writing. This will preserve her memory and for all Jewish women.
Thank you. So born above, she got married at 16. Her son wrote her qualities and introduction to her husband's work. Okay, she was a guide for Jewish women, Rebbetzin Bayla Katz, pious woman of prayer, highly learned in uneducated times. You have to understand, education at the time was a luxury beyond luxuries. Most people did physical work every day, men and women who had time to sit and study. It was the rich, it was the people who were wealthy, it was the people who were scholars, not only Jews, just in general. The society at large was uneducated. No one was educated. People were just surviving day by day. To have a woman at that time, which not only we'll learn about her, had this ability to run business and to move and shake, but she also was a scholar in her own right, was extremely unique at her times. Let's see, Rabbi Yosef describes his mother's daily schedule. Let's see in text number 14. Maybe somebody online wants to read. Dan, you up for reading, Dan?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. Okay.
So if you give it a shot, you might succeed. But go ahead.
All of her days, both in winter and summer, she always rose early, several hours before dawn, and prayed at length with great devotion. She held the key to the women's section of the synagogue and was the first to arrive and the last to leave. She would remain in the synagogue 1 or 2 hours after everyone else had left, completing her prayers and supplications. After her prayers, she did not indulge in any idle matters. She went to study the Torah, reading the weekly Torah portion with Rashi's commentary as well as other commentaries. This is all well known to all of my father's students who ate at our table. Whenever they discussed Torah matters at the meal, she would join the discussions like one of the students. She would occasionally come up with original interpretations that were as sweet as honey. She was especially knowledgeable in the laws pertaining to women. She always devoted her mind and heart to understanding the reasons behind the Torah's laws. Okay.
This is a pretty unique individual, especially for that time. You had somebody that was not, the society at large, as I said, was not educated at all, but yet boys in Torah, at that time, boys were mandated to have an education for sure. Women, girls had an informal education. It wasn't textbook, but it was more informal about morals and guides and more of an informal education. But for her, she was the first in the synagogue and the last one out. She had the keys. She would study. When there was discussions about Torah and about different Torah thoughts, she actually gave her opinion. And she would go to her husband. When her husband had the yeshiva, she would go and she would debate these halacha, the big debates that were going on with the great rabbis at the time. She was sitting at the table debating those things. She was an incredibly gifted person. She grew up in a wealthy home, so therefore she had an education. She got an education because of her prominence of her family, but it was still unique, very, very unique. And not only that, she was able to contribute to the discourse. And an example of how she did contribute to the discourse is on page 122, text 15. Millie, I know you're there, even I can't see you. There you are. Perfect. So if you can read, please, text 15, and I'll explain to you the backstory once we read it.
Okay. The blessing over Shabbat candle lighting is recited after lighting the candle.
Okay.
However, to fulfill the requirement that a blessing should precede the mitzvah, we should not benefit from the light before reciting the blessing. Therefore, after lighting the candles, we block the candle's light with our hand and recite the blessing, after which we remove our hand. As a result, the blessing is considered to have been recited before the mitzvah action.
Nice. So I'm going to explain to you what's going on, all right? Every time we do a mitzvah, when do we make the blessing? Let's say Hanukkah candles. When do we make the blessing? Before you do the mitzvah. You're about to eat matzah. When do you make the blessing? Before. Any mitzvah we do, we first make the blessing, and then we do the action. Also with food, we first make the blessing, then we eat the food. There's a blessing after, but the blessing before, when it comes to any mitzvah, to fill in, we do first the blessing, then the action. What's an exception to that? Shabbat candles. First you do what? You light the candles,
and then you
say the blessing. Why is that?
You can't light the candles after you've been on Shabbat.
Because the moment you make the blessing, blessed you God our Lord that commanded us to light Shabbat candles, you are accepting Shabbat in your own personal Shabbat right now. Shabbat is now on you. Are you allowed to light after you accept Shabbat? No. So first you light. You ever saw the custom that they cover your eyes? Right? Why do you cover your eyes? For this reason. Because you light the candles, you cover your eyes, you make a blessing, then you open your eyes and you benefit from the light. You enjoy the light. So it's almost as if you're lighting it before because you can't light it after. So you're lighting, cover your eyes, you're not looking at the candles, you make a blessing, then you open your eyes and you accept the light of the candles. So this Rebbetzin Bayla Katz was suggesting a difference between Shabbat candles and holiday candles. That means candles we light before every holiday and before every Shabbat. So the candles before Rosh Hashanah, the candles before Sukkot, the candles before Passover, right? So what's the difference? What will be the difference, guys? Pop quiz. What? Why is the difference between holidays and Shabbat?
Oh, because the holiday you're allowed to make.
Holidays, you're allowed to light
Right.
from an existing flame. Okay, you can't strike a match. But if you have a candle sitting there, a yardstick candle, you're able to light from an existing flame and transfer the flame. You can't
Exactly.
create a new fire. You're able to transfer from an existing. So Bayla Katz suggested that when you light the candles of a holiday, when should you make the blessing? Before you light. You following? Why? Because you're allowed to transport fire. So make the blessing, Baruch Atah, the holiday candles, take the flame and transfer it. Right? Makes sense, right? Until her times, it was done before. Now, why was it done before? Because people felt that this could be confusing. Shabbat, holidays, people might come to then mess up on Shabbat and make the blessing after you light, or before you light, which would be a problem for accepting Shabbat. But Bayla Katz, Rebbetzin Bayla Katz, insisted that there should be this difference because really the blessing should be before. Right? That's text number 17, where she makes the case. I don't want to let's move because we're a little bit short on time. But if you look at page 125, Bayla was widowed at a very young age, at the age of 41. In 1641, she was widowed. With her children, she made aliyah. Aliyah is the term we use when someone moves to Israel. We say made aliyah, which literally means going up to Israel. She moved in 1623 to Israel at the age of 50 and spent the last 8 years of her life in Jerusalem. She was renowned for her piety, her scholarship. She died in 1631, 8 years after she moved to Jerusalem, and she's buried in Mount Olives in proximity to the grave of Zechariah, the prophet. That's how prominent she was. On page 125, we have a picture of right. This is her grave site, right?
Right.
That maybe a mausoleum, what it's called. So we have over here. We already went through this. Sorry, I'm delayed with this with the screen today. But the act, then the blessing of their eyes, and you uncover. But festival candles, according to Rebbetzin Bayla Katz, was instituted in many Ashkenazi communities because of her insistence. So we see from her she was a very successful person. Her life story is someone that had unique access to education and to money and to prominence, and she used all of that to nurture and encourage and to further Jewish education. So she devoted herself to charity. She engaged in acts of kindness, visiting the sick, comforting the mourners. She was like a mama on the Jewish people. And she was industriously cared for her home and guests. Let's see. One second. Widowed at the age of 41, she made aliyah to Israel and dedicated her life to study, prayer, and charity. She passed away at age 58 and is buried in Mount Olives. So we have from her, she exemplified the traits of a Jewish woman of valor. And fine. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at general traits. The general trait of a Jewish woman of valor serves as an inspiration for how to better live our lives. Lives of giving, lives of nurturing, lives of caring. That if we have the ability to be instrumental and influential, we got to take it on. So let's see a video which is going to summarize today's class.
Heroines. Narratives. 1. Doña Gracia was born in Portugal in the early 16th century to a family that had been forced to convert to Christianity, but had continued practicing Judaism clandestinely. After fleeing Portugal and openly embracing Judaism, Doña Gracia used her enormous fortune to help her fellow Portuguese Jews escape. She helped the refugees re-establish themselves financially and bankrolled institutions and publications to fully restore their Jewish faith and practice. 2. Rebbetzin Bayla Katz lived in Lviv in the 16th and 17th centuries. Her husband, Rabbi Yehoshua Falk Katz, was a leading halachic authority. Rebbetzin Bayla maintained a busy daily schedule of prayer, Torah study, family and household maintenance, and communal activism. A scholar in her own right, she proposed halachic opinions that are highly regarded by halachic authorities. General points. 1. Historically, Jewish women have been considered the mainstays of their homes and communities, and they played unique roles in nurturing the Jewish family, community, and faith. 2. The classic Woman of Valor song from Proverbs ascribes 5 prominent characteristics to the ideal Jewish woman: industriousness, resourcefulness, devotion, generosity, and awe of God.
All right, next week, guys, we're going to be discussing heroes and hostages. How did a band of pirates capture a ship ferrying 4 rabbis, change the course of Jewish history? That's the first one. The second one, why did a top German Talmudic sage of the 13th century refuse to be released from prison? We'll learn the story of the Ramah, which is an incredible story where he refused to be bailed out. And how did a 17th century hostage crisis in Ukraine unite the Jewish world for an unprecedented rescue mission? And that's not next week, guys. I'm sorry. It's in 2 weeks. We're not going to be meeting next week. We're going to be meeting in 2 weeks on the 20th, right? 20th of July. The last one is in 2 weeks. Next week's going to be the fast of the 17th of Tammuz. Now, guys, if you have enough time, I encourage you to read the appendix. The appendix will give us a third example of a woman of valor. Her name was Glickel, and she wrote a diary that we learn a tremendous amount about a very similar storyline with great prominence and with great scholarship, and she was able to contribute to the Jewish people an immense amount. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you, God willing, in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yasher Koach. How's everyone online? Everyone's okay out there?
Yeah.